Hi, I'm Nate the Maker, and today I want to show you how to make a bed frame out of wood.
Now before we get started, I want to talk to you about first time makes. Now this is a new series that I'm starting where we're gonna just make things for the first time. I'm gonna make mistakes along the way, but I want to highlight that and show you guys that every maker makes mistakes, especially when they're doing things for the first time. So I hope you enjoy this new series. It's here to inspire you to get started and just continue even through the mistakes. So let's get back to the video.
For anyone who wants to build this, just went online, found a whole bunch of images of beds that I kind of liked, found this one, and then modeled it up in Fusion 360 afterward, and have just gone from there. It's a pretty simple bed design. It's a nice sleigh bed. So in front of me, I have a couple pieces of red oak, all cut down to length. I bought these at the lumber yard and then brought it down to my dad's shop to cut them on the table saw and chop saw to cut them down to length.
The parts I'm cutting out are 4 pieces for the headboard, 4 pieces for the footboard, and I also need to make 2 tops for the headboard and the footboard, 4 legs, and 2 side rails. Now the side rails are just going to be really long pieces, and so those are basically done after I cut them. Now to cut everything down to size, I'm going to take the raw wood and cut it through the table saw to get the correct width, and then I'll use the chop saw to cut everything down to the correct length. And this way I'll have the perfect sizing for my wood.
I feel like they're always trying to cut me.
While using the chop saw, I wasn't taking into account the length of the wood, so before I make this first cut, I need to set up a little table to hold on to the other end of the wood so that it's not going to fall and hit the ground and potentially dent it.
Is this gonna fall? I don't know how to solve this. When it can fall. What's that? Probably not.
First thing we got to do is to make the headboard and the footboard, and we're going to do that by drilling in some holes, putting in dowels, and then gluing it all together. Let's get started. So I'm going to start out by laying out where I want the boards to face for the headboard and the footboard. So I have this small piece that is almost the right size. It is just a little bit proud of the correct size, so what I'm going to do is leave this at the bottom of the headboard so it'll be covered by the mattress. Even if this isn't to length afterward, you will never see it. But the rest of the pieces are cut extremely longer just to make sure I can play with the distances and find the right layout I like, and then I'll just cut it to length when it's all assembled. Now part of this project is I don't have a wood jointer, which means some of these might not line up very well or perfectly, but they will be close enough for this project, and they will be heavily clamped during glue up, so it should work out very well. But you can see almost here, there's no line almost, and then down there it's much worse, so we'll have to make sure everything's clamped together correctly and just go from there because I don't have the jointer to do this. Okay, so I have the headboard all glued up. I'm gonna let this dry tonight, and then I'm gonna come back, do the exact same thing to the footboard tomorrow.
So I'm back the next day. This has been drying all night, and I'm very happy with how this looks right now. The glue kind of came out of the cracks, which means I had enough glue and it was pressed out. I'm gonna take a chisel and finish this off. I'm gonna take it out of the clamps. Hopefully it's square and straight. We should be good to go. This is a nice little headboard. So now it's time to do the exact same thing I did with the headboard, but with the footboard. I'm gonna mark off where I wanna drill with the pencil, drill, put the dowels in, glue, and then clamp everything back up, and then we'll come back to the footboard tomorrow. So while the footboard was drying, I decided to go out and try to use the router. It was a little late at night, and this is my first time using the router. And so it was just sitting on the ground, and I had run a few test pieces through, but I didn't exactly know what I was doing, and it didn't turn out right. I was testing out the router to make the pieces for the tops of the headboard and the footboard. And I had not really used a router before, so I had made a few mistakes. I started going the wrong direction on the router and figured out it only works one way. Left to right is not the correct way to do it. If it's on a table, you need to move right to left. Anyway, I may have not had the thing properly tightened, the bit, and what happened was I did one route along one of the tops, then about halfway down the other top, the router bit came loose and sent a hole straight through the top of the wood. So I didn't buy extra wood because I didn't think this was gonna happen. So that night I had to pack up, put everything away. Then the next day I had to go out, get new wood, come back, recut it, get it down to size, route, take it down to the shop, route it, route some more, and again, keep doing it because you're learning. And we have our final piece ready to go. The good part about this is the original routes on these, way too deep, way past halfway. So I would have had to do them over again anyway. Just sending a hole through the piece of wood that you're working on, really frustrating, but I guess it was a blessing in disguise because I learned how to use the router correctly, and I have the pieces of wood that I really want to use instead of the ones that are routed way too big. So that's my little spiel on if things go wrong while you're making, it's okay. There's always a little bit more time just to do it right, and you're gonna be okay. Now with this new router knowledge, I decided to get started on the headboard and the footboard, which require a lot of routing for this project. First, I needed to cut the headboard and the footboard down to length, and this was just a simple cut with the circular saw. Next, I used the design I made in Fusion 360 to find out the exact dimensions of what I needed my routes to be for the headboard and the footboard. Now, one of the things I learned earlier is a router likes to take small, tiny bites out of the wood you're working with. And so because of this, I had to take several passes at the wood. But that's why you see so many shots, because I really want to stress that I went slowly and I just went through and routed just to do this right. When I go back and look at the other part, it's probably because I went too fast and tried to route too much at a time. So when you're working on your projects, make sure you know that and understand that a router likes to take small bites. Next up, now that I don't need these pieces anymore, I have all my pieces laid out in front of me. I have on this side the top for the headboard, top for the footboard, the legs for the headboard, the legs for the footboard, the headboard itself, and the footboard itself. So on the headboard and the footboard, I had to route out about 2 inches on one end and then 1.25 inches on the other. And this is gonna be where the decorative route inset is gonna be. And so the top of the headboard will go the top and the legs on the side, and then there'll be a little about 1/2 inch route all the way around the edge left over. My next step is to take a sander and finish up these edges that have been routed. They're close but not perfect. After that, I'm going to take the top and the two legs and attach it to the headboard and the footboards themselves, do a whole bunch of glue up, clamp them, and then leave them overnight so that they can be ready to be sanded and then sealed tomorrow. So it's been a couple days. The glue should be very dry by now. I'm going to take all these clamps off and hopefully see a good headboard come out of this. I'm excited. The next steps after this are to sand and then wipe it down with the tack cloth, put on the sealer, and then sand again, probably add a second layer of sealer. Then I need to add the hardware, and we should be really close to having a bed then. Let's do this thing! Oh man, I love pipe clamps so much. They're just so helpful. See how heavy this is? This is what I have to, probably the heaviest part of what I have to move every time. Whenever I do move. It wasn't even that bad. Next up, let's glue up the footboard and get it ready to go. So it's the next morning. Here's my footboard all glued up. All I gotta do is take the clamps off. I'm gonna do a layer of sanding, probably do some wood filler in the corners, then sand again, then put the sealer on. Should be good to go and have a bed. Take all these clamps off now because I'm very excited to see how this looks. Can't have too many clamps. So this is a little bit higher than this. You can see the shadow right there, but it is lined up on this side. And since this is the back, it's just gonna be sanding it down. That's fine. It's actually better that it's higher because I can get rid of it instead of it being lower when I have nothing to do. So you can see there's glue and a whole bunch of random stuff around the seam. So I'm gonna sand that all down, make sure this is a nice flush contact. It's actually pretty good most of the way around. Yeah. I have everything sanded down to 150 grit. It's very smooth to the touch. I'm very happy with how this is turning out. I won't get any splinters or anything. I added wood filler to some of these cracks because they were a little bit farther than I liked it to. And that's just because I didn't get the cuts exactly right. But you can't even tell if there's wood filler in here once you sand it down. And it looks like I did the cuts correctly, so win-win. Next up is to add the hardware for the center support, as well as the hardware for the side rails. I'll just put up a stop block, put the hardware up, mark the holes, drill them in, and it should be good to go. Same process for the middle. I'll do the exact same thing on the footboard, and after that, all I have to do is put the polyurethane on it. We're getting close. So I have the holes all drilled out. Next thing to do is to wipe this all down, get all the sawdust, any kind of dust or dirt off of it, and then put the polyurethane on. Now to get the dust off, I'm gonna use a tack cloth, which I've never used before, but it's stickier than I thought it was gonna be. Then we'll do the polyurethane. Okay, so these pieces have got enough time to dry, except for a little bit in the little routed area, but I'm gonna go over very lightly with some 400 grit sandpaper and just knock down the surface down, make it a little bit smoother, and then go on with a second coat, wait for that to dry, and then repeat the exact same process for a total of 3 coats on all the pieces. Now all that's left to do is to attach the hardware to the bed. Now this includes the connectors for the side rails to the 2 end boards. It includes the L brackets that'll hold the slats, and it'll also include the face hangers that will hold the 2x4 in the middle. Now to assemble this bed, you stand up the headrest, then you move the side rails into position, and the connectors have a little hook that holds on. Then you send a screw through the connector to really hold it in place. You do this on all 4 sides. Then you put a 2x4 down in the middle across the hanger. Then you put the slats right on top of the L bracket. Now I didn't show the slats earlier being made, but they were simply done on a chop saw, and they just put a stop block up to 55 inches and send a cut through. Now that is it for my bed project. I'm super excited with how it came out. I've been using it for a couple of weeks and there's no creaks. It's completely solid. I was kind of worried about when I got it that the wood was going to be too thin for the legs and maybe it would just break under the pressure of the mattress, but it's been perfect. It's a solid bed and I'm very excited about it. And thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. I'd love to answer them. And if you're working on a project yourself, leave it down in the comments too. I'd like to talk to you about it. If you're new here, don't forget to, and I'll see you in the next video.